Welcome to Class Act, Conversations in Data and Leadership. I'm your host, Shannon McKechnie, Managing Director at MBN Solutions. And in every episode, we'll go behind the scenes of great leadership, from key hires and scaling teams to the human stories that shape the industry. This is where real conversations happen. Let's get into it. So, David Goodacre, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
In this episode, we're going to explore what it means to lead through complexity, build strategic clarity, and deliver transformation that actually works. So before we get started, I thought maybe give us a little bit of context. Your journey from MOD to Barclays and leading transformation teams in those worlds. Talk to us a little bit about the key moments that have shaped your own path.
I think for me, it started really early on. I always wanted to be in the army, and I liked the idea of leading soldiers and going in to fight and doing good for other people. And so leadership was my sort of key thing throughout. When I was young, it was about being in charge. And I didn't really understand that it wasn't just about being the boss. At school, I became sort of house captain and wanted to be in charge, and then went to the cadets and the TA and did all of that through where it was all about being in charge. I started to realise that it wasn't about me. It's about the people I was looking after. And that kind of came out first at school when I got it horribly wrong. The class voted me in as their house captain and then turned on me quite quickly when I was quite bolshy and officious. So there's lots of lessons about, it's not about you, it's about other people and about how you lead them. And I think it then turns into how do you get the best out of people? And I think transformation change is all about getting people to do what you need them to do. And again, the leadership is going beyond just the management of people. It's getting them to do that extra bit, which is what you need in stability and change. And I think leaving the army where I was never a transformation person. I sort of ended up doing it because I was in the right place at the right time and saw an opportunity, and then moved to the bank where, again, the challenge was come and find the gnarly problems and solve them. And it sort of slipped into transformation where, again, for me, the transformation was the big change of the organisation and how you do that. And that's all about people.
Yeah, absolutely. What a tough lesson for you to learn at such a young age as well, though, about what leadership actually is. It's not just about being bossy.
Yeah, and great, because I was delighted I was the only one from my school to be in that class and thought, I've done well, the boys have voted me in. And then really quickly, I realised it wasn't about grassing them up to teacher, which is what I was doing. So yeah, it was my sort of first lesson. And I think just going from there and then into cadets, and again, you always wanting to be the next rank up and be in charge, but realising that it wasn't about being in charge. It was about looking after the people who were in your charge. Some hard lessons early on, but it helped going into later life in the military.
Yeah. And actually, as we sort of move on to that, so you've led in some of the most high pressured environments that anybody could imagine. What's one moment that really stands out for you and really sort of tested your leadership? And what did that teach you?
It's quite difficult. I mean, a lot of people have had far worse situations than I've had, but I think the key thing is leading soldiers in combat is actually really easy, partly because they know what they're doing, they want to be there, and they're quite motivated to deliver. So the hardest part's when it goes wrong. So if you take casualties or something's happened where it goes wrong. So I won't use one of my examples. I'd rather talk about someone else's. But if you remember the images of a soldier burning, a child petrol bombed, a soldier in Iraq in an armoured fighting vehicle, and it'd been really easy for soldiers to behave inappropriately after that, seek retribution and those sorts of things. And I think leading when you've got that situation, say after casualties or after something's gone wrong, is much harder. And I think keeping people on track, because at the end of the day, the job is about application of extreme violence, but within bounds of what's ethically acceptable and what's morally acceptable. And we're just there representing the people. When we talk about representing society, it's not about representing every part of society and looking like society. It's about representing the moral standards of society. So there's the legal implications, but also the moral side and the ethical side of what we're doing. Keeping that on track. And it's not to say soldiers would go off track, but I think knowing that that's the challenge you've got to deal with. And there's examples through history of people who've got it wrong. In Vietnam, it went horribly wrong and values were used as an excuse that we've got loyalty, we'll look after each other. And then the soldiers on one occasion in Vietnam behaved completely inappropriately, killing hundreds of people, but didn't tell anybody because we're all in it together and we were loyal to each other. So there are brackets where you've got to be really careful about overstepping the mark.
Yeah.
That situation in Iraq, the officers and sergeant majors in charge were very clear very early on that you are not to overstep the line. There will be serious consequences. And that was a form of leadership where they were very strong and kept everyone in line. Not to say they would have stepped over, but they kept them in line anyway. And I think that's the challenge. When things go wrong, that's when you need strong leadership. When things are going well, leadership's easy.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's a big lesson to be learned in any environment, but certainly from some of the really high pressured environments that you've worked in. And I know sort of in your career as you've moved into the corporate world, you know, change and transformation is something that comes up quite a lot in your career. So what do you think, David, separates change that sticks from change that stalls?
I think change and transformation are quite negative connotations anyway for people. I did my IOD course many years ago, and the IOD talk about there's three things that people always react to, which is sort of why are you doing this to me, what's in it for me, and what's the impact on me. And apparently, according to the IOD, you need 70% of the workforce on board for change to land. So if you're missing 70% or missing that much, you're not going to land it. So you've got to understand the impact on people, I think. As I say, that's where the leadership comes in. But understand the difference between transformation and change. Change is sort of, to me, small steps of things you need to do that are driven internally. Whereas the transformation is the big hand. We've got a vision to achieve and we're going to go from here to there and set up that transformation of the organization. And you look at something like McKinsey's 7 S's, it's much more around the skills, the structure, the strategy, rather than just lots of change projects. And what I've seen a lot of the time is people talk about transformation. What they mean is a bit of change. And landing change can be quite difficult because people see it personally. Rather than everything's changing in a transformation, it's more around we're going to do that, and it impacts you individually. So I think there's a bit about that. And I think a large part of it is having a really clear vision and purpose, understanding why we're going to do it and communicate. Any change is constant through organizations and business and everything else, but I think you need to constantly communicate why you're doing it. And one of the things I found, the military, there's things the military get wrong, but some of the things they're very good at is communicating. We're forever being told what 1 up, 2 up wants to achieve. So generally when I'm giving instructions to people who are subordinate, they know what I want, they know what my boss wants, and the boss above that wants. And we don't do that in civilian practice. So it's quite hard sometimes to see where your activity aligns with the bigger purpose. And I think being able to articulate that clear vision and purpose is really important to land transformation and change. And then on top of that, there's a lot of resistance, as I say, to change. So people are generally reluctant to do it because they're quite settled in the world they're in and they want to know the impact of them. So you've got to communicate why you're doing it and what's going to happen to them. And I think, when we talk about change in organisations, a lot of the time people are thinking about redundancies and those sort of things. So clarifying that quite early on is really important, I think. And having proper leadership and sponsorship of it so that people understand what's going on and can see the higher leadership involved in it. And plan it. A lot of times it's not planned. It's, we need to do this. Let's bring in this new tool or new thing. Let's deliver that. And they don't actually think about how you plan for that, how you execute it properly, making sure that there's all the elements of, have you got the right skills? The military talk about the defence lines of development. So it's going through everything from what training is required, what infrastructure is required. If you buy a new helicopter, but you don't train the pilots, the ground crew, you don't have a hangar to put it in, you don't have the doctrine for how it's going to operate, etc., then you're going to fail. And I hear quite regularly in industry, we talk about people, process and technology, but they don't always think about those other bits, like how do you train the people? Have you got the right skills of the people you need to deliver that change? And who's going to do it when it lands? So you bring in a new piece of tooling, but who's trained to use it once it's in? And that can be the challenge a lot of the time. So the human factors element is often misplaced as well.
It's really multifaceted, isn't it? And going back to what you said at the start, which I absolutely love, aligning your LinkedIn profile, which I love, which is about vision. And I'll read it because I don't want to get it wrong. But on your profile, it says the vision is what keeps everyone going when they have a bad day. You sort of touched on it as well. Leadership comes into play when, things are not going well. How do you, as a leader though, how do you keep that alive when, especially when the pressure is on or things aren't going as planned?
Yeah. I mean, the vision, it's the anchor for the organisation. So it's the North, everyone talks about the North Star or whatever it is, but it's a vision of shared goals. And the idea is if you've got the shared goals and you can see the line through it, people are able to identify what they're delivering. So it keeps the teams motivated to delivering that unified thing at the end. In military language, we'd use unified purpose. So at the end of every mission statement, we will say, in order to deliver this. And that's the unifying purpose. And the idea is it's a collection of all the individual mission statements into that's what we're going to achieve at the end of the day. And I think that unifying purpose is something we often miss. And I think that's the key bit for a vision. And I hear, you do see vision statements around that are quite wordy or quite long, whatever. And there's a big debate. Should they be achievable or not? Is it the North Star? Is it not? And I think if you use examples of companies that are successful, I mean, I've got Apple's is to make the best products on earth and to leave the world better than we found it. Now, that might be achievable, but they're not going to get everyone that's currently Google. So they might not get a gadget in everyone's hand. And Google is to provide access to the world's information in one click. Really simple vision statement. And I think having that clarity that allows everyone in the organization to see where they fit to push through, I think is really important. And again, I can use an example of the Space Center with Kennedy visited many years ago. And he asked a janitor what he was doing. And the janitor said, I'm putting people in space. And it was all around the idea that we're all, my little bit of it is collaborating to make that final vision that we've all got. And I think that's the key bit that I was trying to say in that is it's the thing that keeps you all going. At the end of the day, you know that I'm doing this to deliver that. So if you're man cleaning the toilets, you're doing it because it's going to get someone in space.
And I think that's really important to make everybody feel part of the common goal, isn't it? And to make sure that everybody knows they have a part to play, no matter how big or how small. For me, that's one of the key elements of leadership is making sure that everybody knows they have value to add.
Yeah, I worked for I've seen some good and bad leadership over the years, and I worked for a really good leader many years ago. And he had sort of 3 key tenets that he used. And one of them was all of one company. And what he meant by that was it didn't matter what cap badge you wore, it didn't matter what your role was. We're all in this together and we're all delivering for that final vision. So you could be the chef, and you look at something like a submarine where a chef's working in a submarine. It must be quite depressing at times to just be constantly turning out cooked meals all day, every day. But if you understand that you're part of that bigger machine delivering something, then I think it's a lot easier to keep going. And I think that's where it's absolutely leadership to make sure that the team of teams and everyone understands that what they're doing matters and is part of it.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think, in today's world, many leaders are trying to lead through volatility, shifting demands, global teams and change in tech. There's a load of different challenges there. What have you learned about keeping people aligned to uncertainty in any one of those respects?
Yeah, I think it's a bit like leading through a crisis. That idea of the vision is really important. So having that transparent and consistent communication around where you're trying to go really matters to people. I think being open and honest really matters. Admit when it's going wrong. And I think as a leader, there's an element of vulnerability. If you're vulnerable and honest and open, that can work for you. We saw it recently in my LinkedIn post. A bit of vulnerability and everyone reacts to it. I think be human. I think leadership is a human endeavor anyway. It's a relationship. Having a relationship with people is really key to it. Be a role model as a leader, play the part, make sure you demonstrate the values you want to have. I think values are really key to delivering on anything. I think if you walk the walk and demonstrate the way you want things to be done, that solidifies people. And there's stories over history of people sort of being the charismatic individual that carried people through difficult times. There's an element of that, but you need to over communicate why you're doing things and where the importance lies for that. One of the examples I use, in a crisis, people revert to type. So the danger in something like all that's going on and things been difficult, it's very easy for people to revert to what they know. So if you are a technical leader that's come up through the grades and ends up in charge, it's very easy to go, I'll just do it myself. And that's one of the biggest challenges we face. I use a ship analogy for it, that if you imagine that there's the engine room, the middle decks and the bridge, if the captain leaves the bridge and starts going to the engine room, everyone's going to follow. All the middle management, everyone will go to the engine room as well. All you end up with is everyone shoulder to shoulder in the engine room telling each other what to do, but no one's looking where you're going and no one's worried about your final direction. And that's where the captain of the ship, at whatever organisation, whatever grade, should be in a big chair, chilling out, looking for where you're going and making sure that you're staying on course. And I think in organisations or on a ship or anywhere else, that's really important. And that crisis management sometimes is people just revert to type. And you see it in large organisations during COVID, everyone reverted to type. You see it when people are, and a lot of people aren't trained in leadership. We promote people through the grades and then they understand it at management, they're not taught leadership. And I think that's one of the key challenges for organisations is holding management and leadership at the right level so they're not in everyone else's face and in everyone else's work. And my first example of it, I think, was probably in Afghanistan in a patrol base. First time the patrol base got shot at, every one of us of every rank was up on the side shooting back and then sort of went, actually, that's not my job. I need to get off the side and others need to get off the side and we need to control the fire and do our jobs. And I think it's really easy to slip into that revert to type when crisis or difficult things happen.
And how do you think you do that? Because it must take, it's a skill to be mastered, doesn't it? Whether it's discipline or I think, when we know it's just by nature, that's what we'll do. So in your experience, or how have you sort of navigated that personally to make sure that you can take yourself away from that environment and go back to doing what you're good at and what you're supposed to be doing?
Well, I think it helps if you're a bit of a generalist, to be completely open. I'm not an expert in anything apart from leadership. Well, that's my trade. I'm not saying an expert, but I've been trained in leadership. It's very hard for me to get too involved in the detail because I'm not in the detail. I've never done that role. And that's part of military education. We're very fortunate. We move around every 2 years. So I've worked in procurement, HR, and lots of other roles, but I was never the expert. Other people were. My job was to look after them and manage them and lead them so they could deliver. And I think if you remember that as a leader, your job is to look after the people who are delivering the job and not do the job yourself. And again, it's Simon Sinek, the quote of, you're no longer responsible for the job, you're responsible for the people doing the job. And if you can remember that and look after them and remove barriers for them and remove blockers and help them, give them the resource they need, it's much easier. My job was always about coordinating and resourcing people to deliver their job. That's a leadership role.
Yeah. And I love the ship analogy that you used as well. I think sometimes a visual description of what it looks like and why it doesn't necessarily work is, much easier for people to see. So you talk a lot about sort of leadership in difficult environments as well. How do you build trust quickly with cross-functional teams, especially when you're working across maybe different cultures, different geographies, even different industries?
I think I've mentioned it earlier, but values are absolutely key to trust. If you declare your values and you stick to them and you actually don't just say it, and a lot of organisations just say it, but if you actually live them, they're the basis of trust. And I think it links into, again, the military has value-based decision making and leadership, but also servant leadership. So if I want people to trust me, I want them to know that I'm there for them, not the other way around. And I think it's really clear when leadership is doing what's right for leadership, not for you. And that's when trust breaks down. If they think you're there to get them promoted rather than yourself, if I'm there to make sure you're looked after and your family's looked after and it's building that mutual trust through getting to know them, knowing what makes them tick, what they need to survive and understand the hierarchy of needs, but just being there for them rather than you're there to make me look good.
Yeah.
And I think you can use the triangle or pyramid of command and authority, turn it upside down. I'm at the bottom, not the top. And I'm there to look after everybody else and make sure they've got what they need. So that idea of servant leadership, I think, is really important to building trust. People need to understand that you're looking out for them and their best interests rather than just out to get yourself promoted and moved on to the next thing. And I think one of the ways we do it is make people feel empowered and valued. So there's a terminology in the military of mission command. It's very much give someone the intent. Don't tell them how to do it. This is what I want to achieve. Again, goes back to that vision. And then give them the tools to do it and don't pick them up for everything. And that mission understanding, it's based on mutual trust. And you've got to let loose and let them go with it to make sure they deliver without you being on the back every 5 minutes. Showing you trust them, they'll trust you back.
Yeah, and I think even through my own career, the times when I've performed best, it's when I know that I've been trusted to do a good job. Yeah. But also, you want to make that person that you're working for proud. They've given you the trust, they've set really clear expectations. Now they've let me go in and do the job, and I want to do the job well and, prove that I can do it. So I think that certainly mirrors some personal experience as well.
Yeah, we all want to feel valued and empowered. And I think the minute you're not, you do the bare minimum. And I think that trust that you've placed in me to go and deliver and do a good job, I'll return the favour by trusting you back. I think it is a mutual basis.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, when people understand that it is mutual and you can sort of leave egos at the door and just, I think, some of the words we've used earlier, honest and open, vulnerability. I think if you can give all of that and it's a two-way street, I think that certainly builds trust, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And as I say, go back to that all of one company mentality, that we're in it together. We're all here of the same team, and building teams is really important. I mean, the mission command element of it and being empowered to get on with it, it's a bit like a rugby team. Again, I use lots of analogies, but yeah, a rugby team is you train, but you let them they all know the intent is to score more points than the other team. On the field, a flash of brilliance here and there will score a try or score points. And they're empowered to go and do that. It's very similar to the army model of mission command, where you understand the parameters, your left and right of arc, you've got to stay on the field, etc. but off you go and score. And I think that's really important to people, because that empowerment to go makes people at the lowest level feel, and it's the idea of leaders rather than leader followers.
Mm-hmm.
You want leaders at every level empowered to get on and deliver stuff, and trusting them to do that, I think, is the way to build that trust back really quickly.
And actually, it's funny you used a rugby analogy, because there was something that I seen online just last night, rugby related, and I'm not a rugby fan, but it sort of popped up, and it was somebody in the team who was about to win. I think his name might be Finn or something. And instead of scoring the try himself, he's actually looked back and passed the ball to one of his teammates to allow them to have that moment of glory. And I thought, in that moment, whether he's the captain or not, I'm not sure, but I thought, well, what sort of leadership is going on within that team? That's the type of teamwork that works, and that's the type of teamwork that if somebody could have taken that shot themselves and had all the glory, but actually passed it on purpose to somebody in their team, it sort of gave a sense of what goes on in those changing rooms.
Yeah, and I think I love rugby as a sport. I think morally it's very strong. It talks about respect for the referee and those sorts of behaviours. But yeah, I mean, I watched that match, and he had done all the hard work. He had intercepted a pass, was going to score, and he looked left. And again, he said he did it because he saw the individual and knew who it was and wanted to pass to him. It might have been retrospective. Actually, that's a really good thing to do. But rugby is about teams of teams again. You've got the forwards, you've got the backs. They train individually and together, and they work well together. But that team that won, you could see the camaraderie in the team. You could see the spirit. I mean, you could see it in both teams, but definitely. And yeah, the guy he passed to who scored, I went to university with his dad, actually. His dad had played for that team 20 odd years ago, or even more. So yeah, it was a lovely touch from someone, again, who actually has been accused over the time of being quite arrogant as an individual. He demonstrated at that point that he was actually about other people, and had some strong moral values, which I think appealed to a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was just quite interesting that you used that, because I thought from a leadership perspective, it was definitely something that looked quite good. What are some traits that you think, so within leadership specifically, some traits or skills that over the years you feel are maybe undervalued or even overlooked, especially in transformation and change roles?
Yeah. I mean, we talked a lot about it. I think trust is the key one for me. It's the centre of all of it. Again, values, and understanding that one of the things I think we get wrong a lot of the time, leadership's a job, and it requires a lot of work and a lot of effort. What you often see is it's seen as a side of desk activity almost, that you could have lots of people working for you, but you still have lots to do yourself. And the problem there is people will naturally drift towards delivering the work for their boss and miss the fact that they've got lots of people to look after. Whereas in the military, my job is to look after my people. So I think you need to understand that leadership is a job in itself, and it is a role. And that, I think, is really key to it, and making sure you've got the time for it. I think as characteristics you can take, there are so many. Integrity, I think, is a really strong value. I remember when I joined the army, I was told, if you have an affair, you'll lose your job, because how can your soldiers trust you if your wife partner can't? And for me, that's always stuck as not as a way to do business, but it's that idea that being true is so important. I saw a guy kicked out of Sandhurst 2 weeks up. So it's a year-long course. 2 weeks before the end, he was kicked out for lying. And that level to me is really important. So I think integrity is really important. Again, it goes back to trust and how people can trust you. And again, to the servant leadership, care. It's a human relationship. We make mistakes. You will always make mistakes. We make mistakes in our personal relationships, but you correct it and learn from it. And I've made significant mistakes as a leader over the years and tried to learn from them and come back better next time. So I think that vulnerability, learn from your mistakes, care about your people, and own everything. I think there's a very good book about extreme ownership. And it is that if I've explained something to you, I want you to go and do a job for me, and you don't deliver it, then I've got to look at how I articulated what I wanted. Was it the way I said it? Did I not explain it properly? So it's that ownership that if things go wrong, it's my fault. If things go well, well done you, you've done a good job. And I mean, there's a very good quote, I think it was Eisenhower. So leadership consists of nothing but taking responsibility for everything that goes wrong and giving your subordinates credit for everything that goes well. And I think that's a really key bit is care about your individuals, make sure you're there for them, but also take the responsibility. And that's the balance between when you delegate decisions or authority You're not doing it to offload it. You always hold the responsibility, but you're delegating it as appropriate that they should make that decision. But if it goes wrong, I'll take the responsibility back and take the fall for it. And I think that's, again, leadership in a lot of organizations. That's what leadership's about. It's about carrying the risk of, if it goes wrong, it's on my head, not yours. So it's not that I have to do it myself because I don't trust you to get it done. Doing it right is, I trust you to get on with it. If it goes horribly wrong, it's on my head. And I think that's a really key bit that we don't always have. You see it politically, you see it in lots of areas where there's a bit of sloping shoulders and responsibility is passed downwards rather than that being held at the highest level when it goes wrong.
Yeah, I think, being honest, that's probably quite rare to see in business, you know, somebody who approaches their leadership responsibility with that attitude. I think that'll be, you know, a key takeaway for me from this as well. But because I think if that was how I was to lead, then who in my team wouldn't trust me, do you know? So I think just having that, it really, as you said, builds that trust. And I was just listening to briefly another podcast that we'd done with a guest last week, and it spoke about being open and honest. But with that, if your reaction to somebody coming and telling you that they've done something wrong or they've made a catastrophic mistake, if your reaction to that is going to be negative, then how can we allow people or trust people to come to us and let us know that that's what they've done? So I think there's a responsibility in our actions and reactions to what we are told.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, maintaining that open door all the time, metaphoric open door. You come and tell me anything, and I'd rather know than not know. And you can learn from, you know, the aviation industry. So things like just culture. You want organisations to have a just culture. So the idea of that is where people can put their hand up and go, I've made a mistake, right? Or I can see something's going to go wrong. And you articulate it, and there's no punishment unless you've been deliberately doing things wrong. So really silly example, but I've seen that something's gone wrong with some of the IT. If it's because you've stuck a pen in it, then yes, you are at fault. But if it's just gone wrong because you typed the wrong thing or did something wrong, absolutely fine, let's get it fixed. And I think it's that understanding that people should be able to come openly, and a just culture is about that. So in aviation, it's very much about safety is the priority. So anything to do with safety, anybody can raise it. Doesn't matter what grade you are, what job you're in. If you see a safety issue, you raise it. And I think we need to get into that culture, that just culture in work a lot of the time, where, you know, if the boss has got an iron fist and people are scared to go to the boss and explain something that's going wrong, then you're never going to achieve great things because you're always going to be picking up the pieces of things that have gone wrong. Yeah,
that makes perfect sense. And I suppose finally, so you're at this sort of transition point in your own career, David. So what's happening with you? What's next? What exciting projects are you involved in? And what are you looking for next?
So it's quite exciting. I think I sort of left the military and went straight into Barclays because they've got a very good transition scheme that looks after military. So I'm very grateful for that. And I got to test my transferable skills. I think now the excitement of not knowing what's next and something challenging is quite good. I'm very fortunate at the moment. I'm doing some consulting with a company called iConfidential, who have been great. They've sort of looked after me. I'm doing some work with them. But going forward, I'm sort of looking to, I like fixing problems. I like helping people. So as much of that I can do, I will. I've started my own company as a backup. So if I can look to help people get involved and have conversations, be a confidant, whatever it is, then I'm really keen to do those sorts of things. I quite enjoy getting excited about new things and delivering things and where being agile about how we can change an organisation or a business and those sorts of things. I love getting involved in that. So yeah, I'm excited about what's to come. I'll avoid the fact I've got a mortgage to pay and I'll just keep getting excited about new things and new ideas. And the more I can get involved with it, from my point of view, the better.
Well, that's it. And I think just listening to you today, it's clear that you've been involved in solving many problems in loads of high pressured environments, but there's been some real key takeaways about how you operate as a leader. And I think any organisation would be lucky to have you in their leadership team. So thank you for sharing all of that with us.
It's very kind.
Thank you, David.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Class Act. If you enjoyed the episode, please make sure to follow the show so you never miss a conversation. And if you're building a data team or making a key leadership hire, please reach out to us at MBN Solutions using the link in the show notes. See you next time.